Thanks for tuning in to DevLockArt, and on this piece I will be using watercolor and ink. And right now I'm using a watercolor pen, and I definitely prefer this over the traditional brush because it makes blending 10 times easier, because you kind of have to be somewhat speedy because whatever colors you're trying to blend together need to be wet. So this pen contains water within it, and so it just saves you time, because with a traditional brush you have to go over to the side, dab it in water, and it just takes up a lot of your time and could possibly not mess things up but make it a little more difficult to deal with. And so that's why I prefer this pen over the traditional brush when it comes to this method. And so the watercolor is supposed to resemble rain, and right now I am creating an abstract version of an arrow. And so when you're making abstract art, you don't have to like go one route. So yeah, I started off with an arrow, but once I got to the end, I decided that it looked too plain and that the tail end of this looked like the tail end of a fish. So I googled a image of a fish and decided to use that as a reference. Obviously everyone knows what a fish looks like, but I wanted to make sure I got the proportions down right and made sure that I placed the fins in the correct area to where you would know instantly that this was an image of a fish. And so and you don't always have to go that route, it's just really whatever you want, and there's really no guidelines to this kind of art. But when I create it, I like to make sure the outline of my art resembles whatever I'm trying to create. And so once you do that, when you get to this big empty space that I have right here, you could literally put whatever shapes you want. And so this art's just like really relaxing, and you get to create, amazing things with it. And I'm not gonna say that it's easy, but it's definitely not as hard because there's no real guidelines. Whatever you want to create, you can create it and it'll be perfectly fine. And sometimes it's good to go in without an idea of what you want to do. You just start by making shapes, putting them together, and it may remind you of something, and that's when you decide to make it into a fish, for instance. And I wasn't too sure if I wanted to color in the shapes, but I'm definitely glad I did because it helps the fish pop off the page. And I enjoy using pen because you kind of embrace the mistakes that you make, and it saves you a lot of time, because people are usually like, dang, you did all that in this amount of time. And I'm like, yeah, because when you're using pen, you're not spending time erasing and trying to make it look perfect, because when you're making this, there's really no perfect, because it's literally just shapes. So just keep that in mind if you want to try this method out. I just find it relaxing, like I said before. I enjoy listening to music, so if you have an artist you would like me to listen to while I create this art, comment their names below. And while I was creating this, I decided to listen to The Coloring Book by Chance the Rapper, and I listened to that project probably 4 or 5 times all the way through, because I want to make sure I have the same kind of vibe and environment around me while I'm creating the art, because you don't want to go from like round edges to very like angled edges, I guess, sharp edges. So I could have went from this to hard rock or something, and that may have been the case. So if you have any artists, like I said, please comment them. Please comment on the quality of this, because this is the first video of me recording myself. And please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.